Hello, voila. How are you?
Are you ready to validate our bureau?
I am. We've had a very busy couple of years.
Busy, very busy.
Indeed.
Where is Martha?
Martha, we need to get started.
We need more help. Let us begin with those modern methods we spoke of.
Ah, yes. Modern methods. Dealing with vice and crime is a science similar to that which is applied to accomplish the prevention of the spread of disease. In modern times, instead of waiting until typhoid and diphtheria and other diseases have stricken down their victims and then seeking them to cure them by sanitation or diet or other preventative measures, modern science seeks to head off diseases altogether.
In a similar manner, vice and crime are now being dealt with. Punishment is the last resort. To prevent crime is the object sought, and instead of waiting until the principles of vice have sunk their fangs into the characters of the young, the influences are changed so that the child may grow up amid elevating surroundings.
It is the purpose of those engaged in this branch of humane work to investigate the home influences of those whom it is believed are being brought up in the wrong paths, and either by suggestion or force compel those responsible for the future of the child to change the surrounding influences.
Yes, it is sought to convert badly started children by training and education into good citizens who will contribute to the welfare of the community instead of being a menace and a cause of expense to it. In this way, I think it is the theory of society that every member of it has the right to protection by it, and reciprocally, that is to the advantage of society to care for each of its members from motives of self-protection.
Yes. Yeah.
Should we start with the cruelty to animals?
Yes.
Much has been done by the state to prevent all forms of cruelty to animals. The man who willfully injures or neglects any animal is guilty of a criminal act. The pains inflicted on the dumb creatures that labor for us must be degrading to humanity, repulsive to all who cherish ideals of gentleness.
Strange to say, the horse, man's most useful servant, is the animal most abused. The stampede and the roundup are losing favor as public exhibitions, and this department will be glad to see them discontinued forever.
The protection of dumb animals rests on three main considerations. 1, their own absolute right to good treatment. 2, the economic value of properly treating them. And 3, the subjective value, educationally, of just dealing with them. Next, let's talk about the girls.
The ruin of girls.
Few children, especially girls, are innately bad or even wayward, but the lack of proper home influences and the natural desire of youth for pleasure, if not satisfied in proper ways, combine to lead them wrong.
It is fair to presume that only a small proportion of cases where girls have been started on the downward path by low-lived villains have come to my attention. But sufficient have come under my observation for the purpose of investigation and punishment to convince me more and more of the importance of the Bureau. Let's also talk about our work with the Montana School for the Deaf and Blind. Because pathetic beyond expression is the condition of many of the inmates of the Montana School for the Deaf and Blind, located in Boulder, Montana. On my last visit to the State School of the Deaf, Blind, and Feeble-Minded, there was an enrollment of 169, 18 of which were blind, 67 of which were deaf, and 84 of which were backward-minded.
Well, it is generally admitted that 2/3 of feeble-mindedness is inherited. If Montana is to be protected financially, morally, and socially, it is imperative that some action be taken in the near future to check the increase of this class of unfortunates, and the best and only way is to prevent parenthood among the feeble-minded. Let us speak of rushing the can. Common practice, especially in the larger cities of the state, is that of sending children to the corner saloon to purchase beer for mama or papa, a practice commonly known as that of rushing the can.
Long before he reaches his majority, he becomes a habitual visitor and patron of the saloon, and it is but a few months later that we find him a prisoner before the police magistrate as a common drunk.
Martha? Are you ready to record our recommendations?
There are many laws that I believe we do need to change.
Child abandonment. I respectfully recommend that a law be enacted making bastardy an offense punishable by fine or imprisonment. These children are now dependent upon the state. Their mothers are disgraced while their fathers are immune from punishment because the offenses were not committed under promise of marriage.
The records of this office show that hundreds of men desert their wives and families in this state annually. Sick wives have been heartlessly left without money, shelter, or medicines. Broods of little children have been left to suffer for want of clothing and nourishment, while the rascals who are responsible for these little ones have gone off into other lands to continue their criminal careers unmolested.
They can't be brought back and made to assume any of the responsibilities of husband and father.
This brings up another important point, which is the testimony of a wife. Under the present statute, a wife cannot under any circumstances give testimony against the husband except for cruelty or crime against herself. The experience of this bureau shows that this statute works great injustice to abandoned and neglected children. In such cases, the wife ought to be a witness against the husband.
Hear ye.
Oh my, and don't even get me started about the dance halls. The cheap and public dance hall has become a public menace and nuisance. It is the brazen big sister of the wine room. Its baneful influence is even far-reaching and more destructive.
Montana needs a law that will prohibit very young girls attending public dances unaccompanied by their parents or guardians.
Oh, another issue we must discuss is the unlawful cohabitation we see happening so much around the state.
The present statute makes the unlawful cohabitation of men and women living in open and notorious adultery merely a misdemeanor. Experience suggests that the offense ought to be made a higher crime with the penalty of imprisonment in the county jail or the state prison.
Absolutely.
Martha, now we're moving on to child cruelty and referencing our reports.
I think some of these reports will help give an audience an idea of the many misdemeanors we have investigated in this bureau. Starving babe fights for life. Deserted mother underfed and in a depressed state of mind, scarcely able to comprehend offer of assistance. Deserts his wife and baby for another woman. For more than 2 years he has failed to support his wife and 8 children. And deserted mother of 4 struggles hard for living.
Although cruelty to children is one of the most horrible of crimes, less attention has been paid to it generally by local authorities than to the killing of a beaver or a mountain sheep. We must talk about the range cattle. The greatest problem in the humane work in the West has been the starvation of range cattle. Gradually, year by year, as settlers came in, barbed wire was stretched across the range and down the stream. The bottomlands and watercourses were fenced up, herds grew larger and more numerous, and the grass was trampled out. There was no longer plenty of cured grass and no longer water. To turn cattle out on the dreary wastes meant that many of them would perish of cold, thirst, and starvation.
Thank you for sharing that. I think it's important that we move on to some of the needs of our office. With everything that's happening and all the occurrences,
Martha,
we need to ask for continued funding and increased funding.
yes, this is true.
Owing to the great number of cases coming to the attention of this bureau, it is absolutely necessary that provisions be made for an additional deputy to be located at Butte, as in that city he can be kept busy day and night.
I'd also like to recommend that a matron is needed. Provision should be made for the employment of a matron in this department at once. There is great need for the constant services of a good, sensible, Christian woman to be commissioned as a deputy with authority to represent this department.
Like I said previously, Martha, more money is needed. We ask for the authority to purchase a suitable set of record books, bound and printed, out of the very meager appropriation of $200 per month, which has been heretofore made for the maintenance of this department. We have been called upon to pay all of the traveling expenses of the 5 officers of this bureau, as well as to pay for all of the supplies of the office.
Railroad transportation, sleeping car fare, livery hire, telegrams, telephone messages, hotel bills, printing, office supplies, postage, and the 1,001 expenditures incident to the business of the department have all been paid out of our appropriation of $200 per month. It requires no argument to show that such a sum is utterly insufficient for those purposes.
I think to wrap up our report, we should highlight some of the aids of our bureau. I think we should illuminate the contribution of the Paul Clark home.
Yes.
The Florence Crittenton home.
Lovely women.
The home of the Good Shepherd.
Yes, great work.
Yes. The Reform School, another good one.
And don't forget the industrial school as well.
Right.
Much gratitude to their hard work.
Yes.
And you, Martha. Much gratitude to you.
Yes.
Thank you, Martha.
We do
You
appreciate
don't have to type that.
that stenography.
Thank you.